Hello, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to today's presentation with India Foundation for the Arts. As many of you know, India Foundation for the Arts is a national not-for-profit philanthropy that supports and implements projects across research, practice, and education in India. Over the last 29 years, we've implemented close to 800 projects across the country. And in 2015, we realized that we had supported these projects with the outcomes of which were films, performances, books, publications, archival material. And we dreamt of a space to house this material. And in that vision came the idea of the IFA archive. The IFA archive was generously built with support from the Indorama Charitable Trust, who continues to support the building of the archive that will be up to date in 2016. But you can go visit the archive online. You can visit us. We have a digital space. We also have a physical space where you can access the material of all the projects that IFA has implemented right here in Bangalore. It's located above our offices. Now, part of what the IFA archive would like to do, other than create this repository of material that IFA has supported and implemented, is curate conversations around archives and discussions around the use of archives and how artists engage with artistic practice and creative processes. And Date with the Archive is such an event. We have had our artists and guest speakers like Navdev Johar, who's talked about his practice in dance, Sunil Shanbag from theater, Nancy Ajania from the visual arts, and today we have a very special speaker who's going to share from her journey in music. But I will invite my colleague Sumana to share a little bit more about our guest speaker today. But before that, a couple of house rules. For those of you on Zoom, you know that we have a chat box, so please feel free to leave your comments, suggestions, appreciation. There will be time to take questions at the end of the presentation, so please do leave your questions for our guests in the Q&A box. For those of you on Facebook, we are also checking Facebook and we'll take your questions from Facebook to Zoom, so do leave them there. I'd like to now invite Sumana Chandrasekhar, Program Lead, to introduce our speaker and the event today.
Hello, good evening, everybody. It's an absolute honor for us to have Shubha Mudgal do this very important conversation with us. Thank you so much, Shubhaji, for being here as our guest for this presentation. Although an artist of the stature of Shubha Mudgal would not need an introduction, just to very briefly, quickly summarize what she is. Shubha Mudgal is one of the most acclaimed Hindustani vocalists of this country. She has been an incredible teacher and has been trained by some of the finest scholar musicians and teachers, gurus of this country. Among the several awards and accolades that have sought her is the Padma Shri, which she was awarded in 2000. Shubha is also well known for her work related to music education and popular music. In today's presentation, Shubha will speak about this very important, very significant connection between a musician's life and the archives. What constitutes an archive of music? How can a creative practitioner in music derive inspiration from the archive, and how can they feed back into a music archive? Today's presentation will focus on Hindustani classical music and will have references from Shubha's own works. She will touch upon disciplines such as literature, anthropology, and performance studies to bring out the interdisciplinary possibilities of archiving, both as creative practice and a pedagogical tool. Over to Shubha Mudgal for this very exciting talk. Thank you so much.
Namaskar, and thank you, Sumana. Thank you, Menika and the IFA team for inviting me to share some of my experience of working with archival material. I must confess right at the outset that I'm not a researcher in the strict sense of the word. I haven't been working on any particular thesis. I haven't written papers. But the study of Hindustani music, and in particular Khayal and Thumri Dadra, which I've been studying for many decades, has been an all-consuming passion for me for many decades now. And this is what has led me to referring to various archives and collections, basically to enrich my own study. I really don't know if sharing this experience will be of any great benefit to anybody, but I'm just going to try and share with you my experience of looking at archives and seeing how I can enrich my own study and enrich my own repertoire of Khayal, Thumri Dadra, etc. By referring to archives. You know, in the tradition that I have been a part of, a great deal of significance is attached to learning directly from your guru, from your mentor. And in fact, very often the system is described as a Guru Mukhi Vidya, or a system of knowledge which you can only inherit directly from a guru. It seems almost as if other external sources would not be considered significant. While there is no strict ban or boycott of external sources, learning anything from other sources could at times be considered either inadequate or inappropriate. Nevertheless, there have been gurus who have also shown the path and said that by listening to other people, to people from other gharanas, there is a great deal that one can enrich oneself with. So despite this bias, if I may call it that, that other sources that do not come directly from your guru, despite this, there being not so significant, despite that, very many individuals and institutions have set up archives for music. One problem that creates, and one sort of strange conflict that creates, is that while there are archives being set up and people are sort of looking for funds to actually set up the archives and maintain them, we are not really taught how to use archives. Our traditional talim doesn't really tell us how to use archives. And if and when we do refer to archives and incorporate information from the archives in our presentations and performances, there's always the chance that it will not be accepted, or it may be dismissed since it was not learned from the Guru Mukh. So this is one slight strange situation which students of Hindustani music may encounter and may have to grapple with. Having said that, we are always told about the great masters and the buzurgs of the past and the present, and we are always encouraged to listen to them. How do you listen to them? So I was also first drawn to archival material when I wanted to find out what did music sound like in the past, who were the great names. The names I knew, but I didn't know their voices. I didn't really know their music. I knew that they were from this gharana, they had learned from this ustad. But looking at old recordings and going to sources for old recordings is first how I encountered any archives that are associated with music. The sources for such collections are known to everyone. There are a large number of private collectors who have built very, very wonderful collections. And of course, there are institutions that have also invested in setting up archives. Private collectors can allow access, institutions can allow access, but very often it's not such an easy task to convince the private collector as well as institutions that you do want to refer to this merely to actually study the music and to learn more about it is something that takes quite a bit of doing. Some collectors are very generous and they share their collections with everybody. They have even digitized them and put them up on the internet for anyone to really, anyone can refer to them. But institutions often do not permit independent artists or somebody who's not a researcher in the formal sense of the word to access their collections. For example, at a very well-known archive in Delhi, I tried to access the recordings that they have in their archives. And I was asked to put in an application, which is absolutely valid. One of the points that was mentioned in the application was that which institution are you associated with? Now, I am really not associated with any institution, and I'm not registered with any university or educational institution as a researcher. And since that was not, it was not possible for me to give any such verification, I was denied access. So there are several institutions that are not so welcoming and which deny access to you. Interestingly, in the digital world today, I find many recordings where I feature as a performer. I never knew that the recordings existed, but they are now available on the internet. I can, of course, download them and store them for myself. But I do know that if I were to ask the institutions that have contributed them, that please give me a copy, I don't think I would hear from them for quite a long time. And there would be this strange silence where I would not know whether they want to give me the recordings or not. So my own recordings are in archives, but I don't find it very easy to get copies or to access them. I also do not know how they reached these archives, and these are national archives, they are national audio archives, etc. So these problems do exist, and each one of us would have to grapple with these. On the other hand, there are very many private collectors and archivists who have been absolutely fantastic. And I would like to mention a few of them. For example, I think all of us know of Dr. Suresh Chanvankar, who is one of the very well-known record collectors in India. He has, whenever I've requested him for a recording to refer to, or even for creating a performance with other artists, as I did when I recently curated 4 or 5 years ago, when I curated a festival, he was always very generous and has, on many occasions, I know he's been very generous with various students, performers, people who want to refer to his collection. But this is a private collection in a sense. Similarly, many of you would know of Srimati Kausalya Manjeshwar, the late Srimati Kausalya Manjeshwar, who was a disciple of the great Srimati Mogubai Kurdikar. Kausalya ji used to go for talim to Mogubai, and her husband, Dinkar Manjeshwar ji, who is also no more, would archive and document all their talim sessions. Can you imagine what a huge treasure this is? The legendary Mogubai Kurdikar teaching her students. And here is this, Dinkar Manjeshwar ji was an amateur tabla player also. But the sense of detail and organization with which he archived all of these talim sessions is really a lesson for all of us who are studying music. He would say which date the talim session took. I would announce that actually, which date the talim session had occurred on, which rag and composition was taught. also which tals and who was accompanying on the tabla. All of that has been documented, and this entire collection has been handed over to multiple archives for students of music to access. Now, I am not really a Jaipur Atroli student, but it is important for me to know what that Gayaki was and how she, Mogubai Kurdikar, taught her students. So for me, this was like an absolute treasure. And for those of you who wish to refer to this, there are multiple archives who are housing, which are housing this wonderful collection. That includes the ARCE in Gurgaon, the Saptak archives in Ahmedabad, and an archive in Washington. So here's another example of a private collector and a private amateur archivist in that sense, actually creating such a wonderful body of archived material for generations of students to access and to learn from. Another person I'd like to mention, and I know I have many such people whom I would like to thank and acknowledge, but I'm going to do only one more because I need to also speak about other aspects of what I've been doing. I'd like to mention the Gwalior vocalist, the very senior, eminent Gwalior vocalist, Srimati Neela Bhagwat. Neela ji has again shown an absolute, I mean, how generous can one be? She has actually shared her notebooks where she notated all the compositions that her guru taught to her. She has shared these on the internet. And very recently, she also shared the diary of her guru, Pandit Sharat Chandra Arolkar. And his diary and his notebook is now available on the internet. There are many such people who have risen above, the idea of everything being kept within the gharana and within the shagirds of the gharana, and have laid bare their treasures for many, many students to learn from. And I remain deeply grateful and deeply indebted to them. So I would have to say that more than formal archives, I have actually been referring to private collections. And this journey started with my actually learning something as simple as wedding songs, from members of my own family, or friends and their family members. And although these are not songs that one sings, let's say, for a khayal recital or for a thumri recital, but I'm merely mentioning this because I feel it's important to acknowledge these collections and these archives as well. They may not be housed in a wonderful air-conditioned, catalogued space, but these personal archives are of great importance, particularly in an oral tradition where many of us learn so many things only by learning and listening to people who are actually walking archives themselves. And, I started by learning some songs from my mother, who had learned wedding songs from my grandmother for each event and each ritual that takes place in a wedding. But over the years, and with the help of other people with similar interest, and one of them was a researcher called Zafar Naqvi, who also greatly helped me in this, I realized that I suddenly had a collection of like maybe 300-400 wedding songs from Uttar Pradesh, in Braj Bhasha, some even from Muslim families, Banna, Banni, Sehra, all manner of songs that were sung at for different rituals during a wedding ceremony in Uttar Pradesh. My mother was from Kumaon, which is in Uttarakhand now. So she also taught me some Uttarakhandi, Kumaoni songs, which are related to weddings. So this is my own little collection, some of which I've recorded, many of which I haven't recorded. I don't know if these songs are of interest to anyone, but for me, they've been a wonderful source of just great joy in learning a whole lot of these very charming, simple songs. They're not very complex songs, most of them, but they've also pointed me in another direction. So of course there is all, the fun and mischief and let's say there is a certain lightheartedness in these songs, but at the same time, the texts also draw my attention to various stigmas, to various biases in society. I remember learning one song from my mother, which went something like this. And I know that she learned it from my father's aunt. So in a sense, my dadi. And it was a very simple thing. Ambar bel udayapur chai. Sorry. Ambar bel udayapur chai jiraj सात बरस की भाई मेरी लाडो जीराज 7 बरस की excuse me 7 बरस की भाई मेरी लाडो जीराज हंसवा के बाबा ने गोद उठाई जीराज कहो मेरी लाडो तुम कैसो वर ढूंढे जीराज 7-year-old girl is being asked by her grandfather, who's indulging her, what kind of groom would you like? I don't know whether I should be happy that the 7-year-old was given this choice of at least stating her preferences. But I know that I froze for a moment when I heard Saat Baras Ki Bhai Meri Lado, and she's considered ready to be a child bride. She's considered to be of an age where she would be a child bride. But the songs really, I mean, these aspects of the songs cannot be ignored. So I think apart from being very charming songs, very simple songs that can be sung with a large number of people in a community, which can be danced to, there are these elements which provide information about society, about norms, mores, rites, rituals in society, which cannot really be ignored. So I started by collecting material from these sort of personal archives. I have also for many years been looking at printed, published text material to supplement my study of music. And digital archives have been very, very helpful in permitting me to source and refer to books that are out of print or which are not easily available any longer. There are several collections from the 19th century, like the Sangeet Rag Kalpadrum compiled by Krishnanand Vyasdev Rag Sagar. Now, this is a collection in which only lyrics have been provided. There are no notations, and the only clues, the only musical clues that one could get are really about the name of the rag may be mentioned, the tal may be specified, and in some cases it may say khayal, or it may say thumri, or it may say cheti or kajri. But other than that, there is nothing that can tell you what the composition actually sounded like. But just a cursory glance at this huge compilation of song texts, of lyrics, will reveal that, we seem to have lost a lot of repertoire that was in circulation and which was possibly performed frequently by artists who were active at the time. So you may find some khayal compositions, you may find some thumris that perhaps are still in circulation, but a large number of them really are out of circulation. And I'm going to share screen now to show you one page from a PDF version of the Sangeet Rag Kalpadrum. And I've highlighted one text in that. So please take a look at that. 1 second. Are you able to see this page?
Yes, yes, we can.
Yes. So if you notice, there is one verse that I have. I'll just try and zoom in on that. Here. प्यारी प्यारी बत्तियां करके जियरा लुभाए लीनो, लाख कही पिया एक न मानी, सन्मुख होए के बुलाए लीनो. So the only clue that I get here is the name of the rag, Bhairavi. And it does say Titala in one corner, but I have no idea whether all of these compositions were in Bhairavi and in Teental, or whether this was a different, whether it was a khayal, whether it was a dadra, whether it was a thumri. There is nothing to indicate that. But I think for me, it's been a very interesting process to try and source, look at these compositions and see if they can be reconstructed and brought into my repertoire again. In this case, this particular composition, I'd like to share with you how I have sung it. I have not composed it. It has been composed by Anish Pradhan. And on the recording that I'll share with you, Anish is accompanying me on the tabla as well, and Sudhir Nayak is accompanying me on the harmonium. But this composition, we've tried to reconstruct as a Mishra Bhairavi Dadra, and I'd like to share that with you. We recorded it for the Saptak festival during the pandemic, when it was not possible to really do live concerts. So we recorded this and it was shared online. Give me a minute and I'll try and share that with you.
जियरा लुभाए लीनो, प्यारी बत्तियां करके जियरा लुभाए लीनो, प्यारी बत्तियां करके जियरा लुभाए लीनो, लुभाए लीनो जियरा, लुभाए लीनो जियरा, ओ लुभाए लीनो जियरा, लुभाए लीनो, प्यारी बत्तियां करके जियरा लुभाए लीनो, बत्तियां बत्तियां करके, बत्तियां करके करके जियरा लुभाए लीनो, प्यारी बत्तियां करके जियरा लुभाए लीनो, प्यारी बतिया करके जियरा लुभाए लीनो प्यारी बतिया करके जियरा लुभाए लीनो प्यारी बतिया करके जियरा लुभाए लीनो प्यारी बतिया.
So that was one composition that Anish took from Kalpadrum and reconstructed it as a Bhairavi Dadra. It also, you know, there's a certain thrill that you get when you look at a work like Sangeet Rag Kalpadrum and you realize that, I mean, there are literally thousands and thousands of song lyrics, compositions given in that. And then suddenly you come across one that was taught to you by one of your gurus. So I was delighted to see a Chaiti that was taught to me by my guru Srimati Naina Devi. And it's usually Chaitis have a particular, a specific template, and many Ghato and Chaiti compositions are sung in more or less that same melody. This also was very special because it didn't conform to that particular template. And Naina ji taught it to me several years ago. I have not heard other artists sing that. And I don't know, she did not tell me that whether it was her composition or not. But I presume that maybe she would have looked perhaps at a source like Sangeet Rag Kalpadrum and adapted it for the Thumri style of singing. And I have recorded it for an album that I did. I'm just going to play a few lines for you, so I'll share audio again. But what a thrill it is to know that this song was sung so many hundreds of years ago. Perhaps your guru saw it, adapted it for the Thumri style, and then now you are able to record it and put it, make it part of an album. So let me share this one with you.
आ गइल चैत रामा आ गइल चैत पियरी न पहिरब हाँ पियरी न पहिरब पियरी न पहिरब पियरी न पहिरब गोरिया आ गइल चैत महीनावा आ गइल चैत महीनावा गोरिया आ गइल चैत महीनावा पियरी न पहिरब हाँ पियरी न पहिरब पियरी न पहिरब गोरिया आ गइल चैत महीनावा आया गइल चैत महीनावा पिया आ गइल चैत महीनवा महीनवा चैत महीनवा पिया
Apart from this, there have been several occasions when I've had the opportunity to work with projects where institutions have given me access to collections that they house and permitted me to create a repertoire from those artworks and collections, based on those artworks and collections which they house. And here I'd like to acknowledge with gratitude the Chhatrapati Shivaji Vastu Sangrahalaya in Mumbai. And I'd like to thank Mr. Sabyasachi Mukherjee, who's the director. He last year I was given this wonderful opportunity to look at illustrated manuscripts that the museum has in their collections, and to see if I could create a performance repertoire that was focusing on those collections. So I worked on that idea, and of course, literature, Hindi literature, Braj Bhasha literature, Awadhi literature has been a area of great interest for me. But bringing together not just the verse, the poetry, I have been singing poetry for a long, long time, but bringing together verse plus artwork, beautiful miniature paintings, and actually singing the texts that are also inscribed in those manuscripts has been an absolute fantastic journey for me, and a learning experience, and very enriching experience for me. So last year, I was given the opportunity to create this repertoire, which was titled Rag, Rang or Kavita. And I'm going to try and share screen with you once again to show you what I mean when I say bringing together verse as well as artworks. So here it is. If you can see this. Rag, Rang or Kavita, concert of compositions inspired by artworks in the CSMVS collection. And I will go to this first composition. So this is an illustrated manuscript, which is sourced from the Chandayan, which was written by Maulana Dawood. And I've taken an element, an extract from a beautiful Stuti Khand, a prayer Khand of the Masnavi, and I composed it in Rag Yaman and in Madhile Trital. This is the text. Pahle gaun sirjanhar. I first sing praise of the Creator. Jin sirja ye des diyar. Sirjas dharti aur agas. Sirjas mer mandar kabilas. And here's a sort of just an idea of what the verse means. So I begin by singing in praise of the Creator who created this land, earth, skies, mountains, and abodes. I sing in praise of the Creator of the radiance of the sun and moon. I sing in praise of the Creator of the heavens and galaxies, etc. So I started the composition, the entire performance with this, but just look at this absolutely beautiful slide of one page from the illustrated manuscript. Similarly, if you give me a minute, I'll share another one from the same repertoire. Look at this beautiful, the month of Kartik from an illustrated set of Bara Masas, which is like a narrative of the 12 months of the year. This is late 18th century. And what I did was to find a verse which I composed in Kamod and in Trital. Ban upaman, jal thal akas disant deep gan, sukh hi sukh sukharati juba khelat dampati jan. So the glimmer of lamps is visible. And if you notice here, see there are diyas, there are various celebrations going on, game of dice is being played, etc. So this composition was in Kamod and in Trital. And since I've mentioned Baramasa, I'd like to share a few slides from another presentation that I did only on Baramasa compositions. Give me a minute, I'll show you that as well. In this instance, I did not use traditional, I did not use any of the miniatures in the illustrated Baramasa that are, let's say, part of the collections that are with Chhatrapati Shivaji Museum. But I worked with a wonderful graphic artist called Nikhil Kaul and shared the idea that I was putting together Baramasa compositions sourced from various literary sources. And he created this slide, a set of slides for me, which were projected at the back. And so he found, for him, the journey of the sun was very important in this narrative across 12 months. So he highlighted the sun. And these are, of course, the credits. But so this is the way we projected the slides behind us and went across. So I took extracts from entire Baramasa songs, and I opened with Malik Muhammad Jaisi's Baramasa from his epic poem Padmavat, written in 1540. And I chose the sections that were on the monsoon months of Ashar and Sawan. This is what the text says. I'll also share a small segment of the audio clip so that, let me see if I can find that for you. So this I sang in Rag Shri in Rupak, and in the recording the audio recording that I will play to you, I'm accompanied on the tabla by Anish Pradhan and on the harmonium by Nyaneshwar Sonavane. Let me play that for you. So these are some of the ways in which I have been engaging with private collections, perhaps not so much with formal archives, only because the fact that I'm not associated with a particular institution or registered as a researcher doesn't let me access many archives. So, but I have I have to say, I feel greatly enriched. I feel very grateful to the people who have let me access these archives. And I hope that I will get more opportunities to work in this way. I think I should stop right now, and perhaps if Sumana, any of you have questions, perhaps we could discuss those.
Thank you so much, Shubhaji. That was really very insightful. And for a lot of students of music, and we have so many students of music here as in our audience today, it's been a great pleasure listening and to also maybe take a lot of ideas, take inspiration from the work that you have done. We do have a host of questions, but I'd like to just start off with one question. I was wondering if you could tell us about how important is it for a student of music to build their own archive of materials that would be of concern to them, materials that would answer their questions. How central is it to the practice itself?
I would think that it's very essential, but how to build your archive, how to create, what kind of structure do you want your, I mean, all of us, for example, today, anybody who comes to learn from you says, can I please record? The first question that everybody asks is, can I please record? But when they go back, do they download that recording? Do they catalog it? Does it become available to them many years from now? If they wanted to refer to that recording, would it be available? So I think a lot of thought has to go in, and a lot of discipline has to be there to I know that I myself have not been disciplined in the past and have lost many things which perhaps I could have kept safely. But I think that now that it is so much easier to record, to annotate, to actually catalog, I think perhaps we should also include this as part of our training. And I try to do it informally. I'm not teaching in an institution. I'm just teaching students who come to me. But archiving is important. But how do you access the archive and how do you retrieve from the archive is also equally important. If that becomes a maze in which you then have to spend nights trying to find that one recording that was taught to you in 1985, then it becomes the idea of the archive is really lost.
Right. Thank you so much. We have lots of questions here. So, Viswadeep, would you like to read out some of these questions?
Yeah, sure.
Or all of the questions? Yeah.
I'll take the first question.
Sure.
So, Radhika Deonali is asking that my question is to Shubhaji. What is a good place to start studying and working at archives that work with Indian classical music?
I mean, it depends on where you are located and which part of the country you're located in and which archives you are able to reach easily. But I think perhaps you will need to have a certain direction that you follow. Do you just want to go into an archive and start listening to music? It's absolutely fascinating to do that, I have to admit. But do you want to look at people who are singing in the same style that you are training in, for example, or that you prefer to listen to? What is it that you want to look at? I think identifying that is also equally important. Are you looking at, let's say, Sankeen rags or rags that are complex blends of many rags? What is your area of interest? Identifying that, and then trying to check whether that material is available in the archive that you are trying to access. A lot of the archives will also not even let you access the catalog. So you won't really know whether what you're looking for is available in that archive or not. Some have now created a catalog. You know which artists are the works of which artists are available in that archive. But I think you will need to lay down the direction that you want to take when you approach the archive to learn more from it. I think you're on mute, Vishwadeep.
Sorry. So I'll ask one question. So you do mention that you face difficulties accessing because you're not part of an institution. So in today's digital world, digital cloud repositories like YouTube, how do you see those? Do you consider those as archive in itself? I know there is no metadata, there is probably no structure at times in terms of data, for example, which years might be wrong written and so on and so forth, but the recording is there. And it's in terms of public access, it's free to access. So how do you see these digital cloud repositories like YouTube, and how do you think these will help the Hindustani classical practitioners or artists like you and so on?
Well, I think they're absolutely fascinating. I'm confessing to being a YouTube trawler. I'm listening to a lot of material from YouTube. I have no qualms in confessing to that. In fact, very many recordings that were housed in archives that denied me access, today I can hear those compositions on YouTube, and that gives me a great thrill and say, look, you couldn't keep me locked out. I'm able to access these compositions now. Having said that, I also think that it should not become merely a repository for picking up new compositions. I think it is very important to acknowledge where you got material from. And I'm not witnessing this kind of honesty with a lot of my colleagues who pick up material from YouTube and are singing it beautifully. I mean, there is no harm in that. I have no issues with people learning if they are so accomplished that they can pick up from a recording and sing. Why not? But at least say where you got it from, that you did not learn it from, from a guru. You heard this, you were attracted to it. What is the harm in saying? So I think that acknowledgement needs to be done. And I think perhaps we also need, when we are teaching, we need to tell our students that, look, if you are doing this, don't go about it merely to be able to get another song, another 2-minute dadra or thumri that you want to learn. So I think it's very important that those aspects should also be, that acknowledgement should also be duly given about where you sourced and from which recording you sourced. And I'll tell you something interesting. Years ago, I found, like I showed you earlier in the presentation, I found a very attractive text which I composed as a dadra, and I recorded it. I sang it in a live concert, which was then published by a very well-known record label. Years later, I find many other students of music and artists singing those, and it's called traditional. Composition traditional. Now, on the one hand, it makes me grin a little to think that my composition is being called traditional, but all the people who are singing that composition, and if they come from the Hindustani classical music background, they call it traditional and sing it, although it could not have been learned from anywhere but that recording. Guess who gave me the acknowledgement? A rock band from Kashmir that sang that composition.
Very interesting.
Yeah. That's lovely. I think that also, like when you talked about Shubhaji, when you talked about YouTube, it answered Rakesh Ganguly's question about the opening up of knowledge, basically, because now all of this material is being posted and online. Of course, like you said, there are questions, and it's so important to acknowledge sources and where the
Yes.
material is coming from.
Mhm.
Abhijit Shenoy is asking, given the issues of copyright, patents, assumed non-legal rights, how can we authenticate a personal archive? And this maybe Bishwadeep or you could respond, both from an archive perspective, but also, I know Bishwadeep has worked with sound archives as well, but also Shubhaji from your own practice as well.
Abhijit is a wonderful musician. Bishwadeep, maybe you can answer this one.
Yeah, so actually, in terms of copyrights is a very, very difficult and very serious issue when it comes to materials in the archives. So, what I think that what Shubhaji actually said, that how acknowledging is very important. So that part also, I think, is very important when we are talking about materials which are copyright protected and we are showcasing them in some event, or also to some artist or some scholar who is here to refer to that material. I think acknowledgement should be enough, but at times there are difficult collections. For example, there are collectors who really do not want to showcase their collection, which is there in an archive. They've donated it to an archive, but at times they do not want it to be public for some reason, and that's very frustrating, to be very honest, from the perspective of an archivist and also from the perspective of artists and scholars who are here to access that archive. They want to refer and they want to cite or quote that particular song or that particular audio clipping in their work, or they want to sing that in some live performance. But it becomes very problematic, and I think copyright is a very big issue in terms of Hindustani classical music in general, in the archives we have in India, because there are many private recordings, and we know that this private recording, if we make it public, then it will create repercussions. But as Shubhaji said, again, nowadays we are seeing that many of those recordings are popping up in online repositories like YouTube, and then at times copyright claims were hit by companies like several companies, labels, but keep on popping up. So I think this is a good way, I guess. Otherwise, in terms of copyright protection, the archive, the audio archives or archives per se are literally tied. Their hands are tied. So yeah, that's what
can I say something? I think that an archive must have an archiving policy. What is their policy? No archive of music can exist without the contribution of musicians. Why are you not asking musicians to deposit themselves? Why are you letting people, why are you saying this is a ISI mark archive when none of us have been asked about those, that music? See, it is not just me. At best, what will you acknowledge? If you learn from an archive, let's say something that you've seen on YouTube, I will say I heard so-and-so artist sing it on YouTube. I will not acknowledge the tabla player, the sarangi player, because either that metadata will not be there, and even if the metadata is there, I have not established the tradition of acknowledging all of them. I think this needs to be repeated again and again while training our students that, look, today you have a whole new world open to you. If you do refer to it, be honest about it. Say this is what you have, these are the details. Why can you not do that? And I think the archives too have to make friends with artists. Why are they accepting material which is not, which is not provided by the artist? What archives of music will exist? I mean, look, I am not at all for being a litigious society where at every occasion we jump and go to court. We'll spend the next 25, 30 years just fighting that. But why on earth is this not being done? Money is being spent. People are working at archives. They are highly trained professionals. What about the basic content providers? Why are you not being fair to them? Any archive that does not do that needs to be condemned.
We have a question from Vagisha Bhatia. This question is about folk songs. Vagisha is asking, folk songs are often passed down orally. So unfortunately, a lot of the folk tradition is undocumented systematically. How should one approach the study of folk music given the lack of the lack of documented repertoires? And the second part to that question is, often folk music is not attributed to a person or an identifiable group of people, but a community or region in general. If one is interested in collecting and documenting folk melodies, how does one go about navigating anonymity and this vast canvas of existence of folk music?
That's a very, very good question. And it's one that I don't have a ready answer to, because this is not something, the solution to this really cannot be arrived at one person. You have to take into confidence the communities that you are recording, documenting, and whose work you are sharing. On what basis will all of that material be shared? How would they like to be acknowledged? Also, trying to look at this issue from several perspectives. There is, of course, the idea of taking permission from the communities that own this community knowledge. But let us say you wanted to record this. Who are you going to ask for a license? Who are you going to pay a license fee to? If you pay a license fee to one person, there may be several other people in the community who said, I never got anything. So then this becomes a huge, again, a battle where people feel deprived, betrayed, etc. I think this is an issue which needs to be discussed threadbare with many, many stakeholders. Sadly, when there are discussions on copyright, we as artists, and often folk artists, are also considered, unko kya pata hoga? You know, what will they know about copyright? So the business, the people who run the business of music in this country, you will not see the names of artists very often in their panel discussions. There'll be record label owners, there'll be lawyers, because it is presumed that we are ignorant. We don't know anything about it. And indeed, we are by no means legal luminaries. We don't know, but surely we have to come to a solution, because this is material that is owned by communities, and it cannot be treated in the same way as traditional knowledge has in other fields. For example, for Ayurvedic medicine, there is no formula that is put together which you can patent, or you can say, okay, this has to be done like this. So I think this is a very important aspect that has been raised. And for years, we have been saying this needs to be discussed, how we can legitimately and ethically use community knowledge in our performances, in our work. That really is not something that I can find a solution to, or you can find a solution to all alone. It will need to be discussed, because India is too diverse a country, and we perhaps will have to look at examples set by other countries, other people working in the same area. We may have to look at that and then arrive at our own solutions.
There's Debankita Das, who is asking, first of all, Debankita is saying it's an absolute honor for a lifetime that they can interact with you. Debankita is asking, I would like to ask, as you pointed out your engagements with Hindi, Awadhi, and Braj literature, how did you find the senses being translated of sounds of rag and tal, along with circulation of texts and sounds across various cosmopolies of Arabic, Persian, Hindi landscape, considering they are all they were all in interaction with each other?
Yes, they have been in interaction with each other, and it's quite fascinating to find multilingual texts also. Very often you'll find a text that is sung, let's say, that is part of temple literature, which is routinely sung at Krishna temples. So one that I sing myself says, Milnave Mehboob Bihari. Beloved Bihari or Krishna is called Mehboob Bihari. And then one line says, Mridu Muskan Sanu Dil Vich Bhandi. It brings in an element of Punjabi as well. So there are all these fascinating blends there are these fascinating multilingual texts, and negotiating the texts and setting them to music. Of course, I can only do so in the styles that, with the kind of musical vocabulary that I have been studying. So I have studied Ragdari music, I have studied Khayal, I am studying Khayal and Thumri Dadra. So obviously I will use uh, my understanding of that to create those compositions. Um, very often one also has to do kind of edits and extract certain lines. You cannot sing the entire uh, complete verse because it becomes too wordy. Then uh, the space for elaboration becomes crowded. It becomes too crowded. So sometimes you have to do that kind of edit also. And I am not somebody who is doing it for the first time. In the past too, many composers have done this. They have taken extracts from existing poetry written by the saint poets, written by bhakti poets, and composed them as Vilambit Khayal compositions, Sadras, Drut Madhile Khayal compositions. All of that has been done in the past.
Thank you. So Shivangini is asking a question more about the contextualization or recontextualization of a song. She says, thanks for a wonderful session. Amar Behal is such a charming melody. What do you think about recontextualizing a song like this in an attempt to remove the biases and yet retain the beauty of the song and the wedding context? I guess more from a practice point of view.
I think in folk music, that's very accepted. I mean, you may have an old folk song which is adapted to contemporary times to bring in events and happenings that are currently taking place. So many traditional songs became templates for talking about, let's say, COVID during the pandemic. There is mention of motor car, the railways. People have used folk music to make a protest against, let's say, alcoholism, etc., etc. So I think folk music has this wonderful tradition of not shying away from what is happening in society and in politics all around us. I think it's the Khayaliyas and the Drupadiyas and the Thumri people who stay away and say, no, we are artists, we are not going to look at what's happening all around us.
Yeah, so I'll take the next question. So Kasturika Mishra is asking that how do a trained singer in Hindustani classical music choose the right poetry or literature to archive them for the future?
I mean, it's all your own interest and your own understanding of what really you would like to sing. There is no right and wrong, I feel, in art. I mean, you can do what you like. It may find acceptance with a large number of people. I think if you're not bothered about it becoming accepted by a large number of people, then really it's quite a fascinating journey to do whatever you want and to listen to your aesthetic sense and to choose the poetry to sing it in the way that you want to, as long as you don't say that I haven't got 1 million views as yet on YouTube. I think that's when the problem starts occurring, when you feel that it needs to be accepted by many more people. I think just do it because you're drawn to it, and that's what I would recommend, but I'm sure others will have other ideas.
Ragini Pashrija asks, the 2-minute Dadra and Thumri is the truth of social media users' attention spans. The kind of systematic and deep study you suggest calls for a whole course on ethics. Would you agree?
I'm not qualified to give that course on ethics myself. And it's only through, to some extent, when you see that you are being acknowledged, but others who have contributed are not being acknowledged, that's when you suddenly realize, because nobody tells us all these things as part of our training. It's only when you learn as you journey along. So I really am not a person who could teach a course on ethics, but yes, I think we all need to think about these issues and see how best we can be fair, how best we can acknowledge people, and how best we can really enrich ourselves with so much material that is both in formal institutionalized archives, as well as in the many people who are like walking archives.
Yeah, and there are, I mean, quite a bit of discussion in the chat box from Anish Khan, from Shubha Chaudhary, and others who are talking about, the context of classical music vis-a-vis folk music, and how,
Yes.
the role of the artist in each of those, and therefore, classical music being more recognized and the status of a classical musician as opposed to what the context in folk music. So that's an interesting discussion that audiences
Yes.
are also following that's
Yes.
happening.
There are two more questions from, here it says anonymous attendees. These are questions from Facebook, I'm assuming, which are to do with acknowledgements and the ethics of archiving. I think that discussion has already happened now, so we could move on. Okay, this is another question from Ragini Pasricha, and it's for IFA, I guess. When IFA gives grants, do you make sure your grantees have the requisite permissions and release documents and acknowledgements? If you have mandated these, please consider making these public. Yes, Menaka, do you want to answer this?
So I was going to say, Sumana, why don't you work closely with a lot of projects, especially in music, and also projects working with communities.
Generally, with communities. Ragini, just to let you know IFA's position on this, yes, we are very, very conscious when it comes to any researcher, any scholar, or any practitioner who's working closely with communities. And often the relationship that the applicant has with a resource person or a community or one member of the community is reflected in the proposal. It is reflected in the budgets often. Sometimes it's not even the proposal that tells us these things, but it's the budget. And that's something that IFA studies very closely to understand what is the nature of this relationship. And we do ask them questions if there's anything that seems like, that needs clarification. We do go back to them, ask them what is happening, how is the process of, what is the methodology of their work, how are these resource people, how are the members of the community being acknowledged in their work, and so on. So this is something that IFA makes sure that these are all put in place. Now that actually IFA is implementing our own projects, we used to make grants earlier, but now most of our work is project implementation, where IFA directly implements these projects with the particular person as the project coordinator. This is also something that we are even more conscious about.
And I just wanted to add that also, Shubha, to your question, material that comes to the IFA archive, we encourage all our project coordinators to share who's in, like say, who's in the soundscape, who are the accompanying musicians, who is a musician. So if it's a photograph, who are the people in the photograph? So Vishwadeep and team have put together what you call a policy of like how they share information to the archive, so that as much as possible the context and the metadata is available for people to access years from now of what this material is and where and the origins of it.
Wonderful.
So yeah, no more questions, I guess.
There's one more from Anil Mebhate, who is asking, I have my own huge personal archive of recorded music going back to the early 1900s. Who do I approach to formally help convert this into archives?
I think maybe
Vishwadeep is not qualified to answer this question. If anybody,
would you know?
Yeah, so I mean, the answer, I don't think there is a straight answer to this, because first we need to know whether all these, what in what medium these recordings are. So whether these are digitized or not, if not, then I think it's better to go to a formal music archive who can help you to digitize these first and create metadata and create a digital afterlife of these physical recordings. I hope, and I'm assuming these are physical recordings. So yeah, so I think it would be better to go and ask a music archive or classical repository to help you out with these. So yeah.
A lot of rich discussions and questions. Do we have a lot of comments and a lot of resources that have been shared in the chat box? I know there is suggestions to collate it. So we will collate all the resources. If you would like to, participants here, if you'd like to access that, please write to us at contactus@indiaifa.org, and we'll share all these resources that have come up in the chat box with you. There are requests for you to sing a particular piece, but we won't ask you that. Any final questions, Vishwadeep, Sumana?
I'm just going through the chat box. There's we have Linda Hess who's saying greetings
Yes.
from California.
Namaskar, Linda
Woke
ji.
up, got up at 5:45 a.m. to listen to you.
So
Thank you
lots of
so much.
And thanks, Daivat. Daivat also has been sharing a lot of resources, links here. Thank you, Daivat, for that. And several other people as well. Thank you so much.
And thank you for all those leaving comments on Facebook. There's Ramnik Singh, there's Jasmeet Kaur, Yusuf Saeed, Anish Pradhan, Prakash. So thank you for engaging with this evening.
No, and
And
thank you to all of
presentation.
you. Really, as I said, I'm not a researcher, but thank you for your patience and thank you for listening to me and actually sparing time to join the meeting.
Yeah. It has been a pleasure spending this evening with you, Shubhaji. Thank you for engaging us so deeply and sharing such a wonderful talk. And also thanks to everyone who has participated both on Zoom and on our Facebook Live. This session has also been rewarding thanks to your insightful questions. India Foundation for the Arts and IFA Archive will be back soon with similar evenings. In the meantime, do listen to the recently launched IFA Archive podcast, which is available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts from. Also, do follow IFA on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. And once again, I want to thank Shubhaji and thank everyone else for joining us. So yeah, thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.